everyone. My name is Xiaohan Feng. My research topic is design that use AI to supervise stereotype, make which wicked again. In popular culture, characters are often closely associated with certain elements, and stereotypes about the character are formed when those elements are common to various works. For example, if there are two women, a woman wearing a hat, carrying a broom, and standing by a pot, people always recognize this woman as a witch. Witch is a complex character with a long history. In most cases, stereotype has consistency and continuity. As for the iconography of witchcraft, the witch is a typical character that continues to defy stereotype through a variety of transformations, including woodcut, oil painting, and imaging in popular culture. In early modern Europe, fear and hatred of the witch were widespread and persistent enough to be reflected in material culture and art. After the age of enlightenment, which believes fate in Europe, and by the 18th century, political persecution had largely ceased, and the image of witches were no longer as hateful as before. As the century progresses, the witch becomes closer to the image with which we are familiar today. In recent years, and more film has described the witch positively, and the witches who were villain in earlier film have become positive character in new remakes. The time when positive image of witches are mainstream, reintroduction of witches as villain may be a key point in overturning stereotypes. This study provides material for future research on character design stereotypes. Then attempt to prove to use artificial intelligence to break the stereotype in design. It is being documented as an experiment in how to survive current stereotype from various periods in history. The method began by using AI to compare stereotypical images of witches. Then the two major components of the stereotype, accessory and appearance, analyzed from historical and social perspective and attributed to the reason for formation and transformation of which image. These past stereotypes are designed using the design approach of extraction, retention, and conversion. And finally, the advantage and disadvantage of this approach are summarized from a practical perspective. We use verbal dream to generate 15 images of which character design. 6 of images have the character wearing a hat. 6 of images have the hat shaped like a triangle. 4 of images has the character wear a long skirt or long cape. And 18% of images have a boom. Then we use disco diffusion was used to generate 15 images of which character design. 98% of the images shows the character with a hat, and 8% of images shows a hat in a triangle shape. And 92 of images show the character with a skirt or robe. 15% of images show something like a boom in the image, and 24 of images shows a pot. Based on these 100 AI-generated images, we summarize the following stereotype about witch character design. 1. Accessory, which had a book and a pot. 2. Appearance, woman who wear a cloak. In addition to stereotypical images, positive image of which has become mainstream in recent years. The first representative of which in pop culture was Samantha Steven in the 1964 Family Guy. In the late 20th and 21st centuries, J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter successfully changed the witch stereotypes. The musical Wicked, which premiered on Broadway in 2003, was a huge success with the witch in the lead role. Witch character design in-game is also leading to positive images. The game Little Witch in the Woods, released in 2022, is an example. Art historians often point out that the description of witch in Europe actually stems from the persecution of Jews. Witches in early modern art are basically villains, the result of medieval European rules associating Jewish heart with witchcraft, evil, and demon, and the artists were designed with this in mind. Naomi, who studies the meaning of costume, argued that the Jewish pointed had become a common symbol in art, especially when used to refer to duels, magicians, and criminals. Anthropologist Robert Scarton believes that the relationship between witch and broom originated in pagan fertility rituals. The French poet The Lady Keeper described a woman on a stick and a woman on a broom. Historians consider this work to be the first known work of Western art to describe a broom and witch. Although the flying capability of witches in 21st century popular culture have diversified, the association between broom and witches are not diminished. A painting that draws two witches standing next to a burning pot saying in a woodcut, casting a weather spell. This work had a profound influence on the iconography of witchcraft. In the 17th century, in Shakespeare's famous tragedy Macbeth, the witch and the pot stereotype was again reinforced, as can be seen in John William Waterhouse's The Magic Circle of 1886, in which the pot and the stick are still depicted. Some scholars have pointed out that the pot and the fog bathing the sky are the author's indication of witch danger. In 20th century film and television, the pot does disappear, but the fog penetrating the sky from the pot is almost percent. As in the early painting, perhaps the pot emphasizing potion-making ability rather than weather magic. The above imaging and records indicate that the stereotypical influence of witches use brooms and pot was already present, well established in the 15th century. There's two stereotypes, unlike the witches had mentioned earlier, have changed relatively little and continue to this day. In early modern European tradition, witches were not exclusively women, but are now stereotyped as women. Estimated for continental Europe, the British Isles and the American colonies, 18% of those tried for witchcraft in early modern Europe were women. This stereotype was further solidified and in modern English, witch has come to refer to women. Appearance of witches before the 18th century. In addition to hats, pots, and other accessories, there were three main stereotypes of witch appearance in 18th century paintings: nude female figure, older female figure, and ordinary female figures in the costume of the time. These three appearances sometimes overlapped in the same painting. For example, the nude of older women. Usually, these appearances would be tied to other elements to convey witch's message. Nude female figures. The 15th and 16th centuries were an important period in Western nude art. After the Reformation of 1570, painters were able to choose their subjects more freely, moving from the religion realm to secular and mythological nudes. During this period, it became fashionable to portray witches as nude women. Lucy Chiswell argued that this emphasized the sexual power of the witches and the need to control this sexual power. In the 9th century, Cardinal Episcopi linked the witches to the devil, and in the 11th century, Bishop Porcher of Rome described the witches being deified by the devil. The first known image of witch in Western art also appear as pagans. And Charles Zika has noticed that 15th century iconography of witchcraft often described them as pagan of the time, often in groups. For example, the Four Witches. The above article summarizes the reason for Renaissance nudes for three reasons. 1. They emphasize the sexual power of the witch and send a message about the need to control this sexual power. 2. It implies a connection with the witch and the devil. 3. It implies paganism and heathenism. Now about older female figures. In addition to nude women, witches are often described as old and ugly. Throughout early modern print culture, it is implied that the body reveals the inner thoughts and action of individual, and that the ugly, aging body is a mirror reflecting the distortion of the mind. In other words, it related to witch's evil mind. A large percentage of the witches accused and executed in the English-speaking world were elderly women. Thus, the older witch's image is also a reflection of reality. Ordinary female figure in the costume of other time. The aforementioned witches dressed like normal people, but engaging in outside the room. And Madeline Carolan argued that the images and projections of these witches define the role of women in society in reverse. Whatever the witch is, she is not a good woman. These paintings constantly warned women, don't cross the line or you are the witch. The appearance of witches after the 18th century. Persecution of witches gradually ceased in most European countries in the late 8th century. Compared to the pre-18th century, which image, the post-8th century, which image become less associated with the devil and paganism. Scholars have noted that the 19th century saw a diversification of witch images and an increase in positive images. There was also an increase in the fusion of the witch with other characters, such as cunning folk, fairy godmothers, and gods. About design, first, in terms of character positioning, although the dichotomy of good witch and bad witch still exists in popular culture, it is undeniable that at this time, the mainstream portrayal of witches in a positive light is undeniable. So in order to reverse the concert stereotype, the role of witches in order to reverse the concert stereotype, we decide to return the role of the witch to that of villain. On the other hand, in terms of visual images, although there have been breakthroughs in the portrayal of witches in many works in recent years, through AI, we can say that the stereotype of witches is still deeply rooted. Therefore, we examine each of stereotypes compiled in the AI and compared a chronology of their evolution. Based on these past stereotypes, a character concept of the villain witches was created. Element extracted from past stereotypes, demon and pagans. From the stereotype of witch's hat, we extracted the devil. Among the many hypotheses about witch's hat, we decided to examine the hypothesis about Jewish hats. The reason for this is that there are many similarities between the historical persecution of witches and Jews. For example, both are associated with the devil. On the other hand, the bull stereotype is associated with heathens, and the decline in persecution of witches since the 18th century is largely due to a lessening of the association between witch, heathen, and devils. Therefore, we believe that those two elements are key to the reintroduction of the witch as a villain. Elements withheld from past stereotypes, gender, old age, and nudity, witches in current popular culture refer specifically to women. Research shows that male witches do exist, and that in some regions, more men than women are accused of being witches. Because it is a subversion of stereotypes, one of which is designed to be a normal male. Conversely, in the case of female witches, older-aged women are more likely to be considered witches. It is clear that this reflects the thought that old and ugly appearance means an evil heart of a witch. Therefore, we designed witches as elderly women who have confidence in their own beauty. Witches in popular culture are almost identifiable by their costume. Therefore, we return elements of Renaissance nudity. element diverted from past stereotypes. The part under the stereotypical which imagine. In early modern works, it is clear that both are often described in the midst of weather magic. In popular culture, on the other hand, the witch part is often associated with potion. Therefore, the stereotype of odds is converted to weather magic. The witch is represented by an image of witch manipulating light sources, being constantly illuminated by top and backlights. The stereotype of the witch is so strong that, for example, most people associate the witch with her hat and her broom. Also, in modern time, witches are often depicted in groups to represent the danger of paganism. So, in the final design, the witch stereotype is silhouetted and filled with the body of three pagans. The design mind map and concept sketch are showing in Fig 1 and Fig 2. About limitation and conclusion. In another study, we conducted a math of subverting design stereotypes from the source of textual records. In this study, we propose to collect elements of past stereotypes from visual art and design, and subvert current stereotypes using the design methods of extraction, retention, and conversion. Study has shown that it is possible to map stereotypes in this way. This is especially true for characters such as which have undergone many translations throughout history. The more changes there are, the more elements can be gathered, and the advantage of this method increases. Stereotypes change over time, and even when the current stereotype has become history. This method is still effective for newly created stereotypes. However, it is still unclear whether this method can be applied to characters with a short history, especially if the stereotypes has not changed since the character birth, which theoretically makes the fund from past stereotypes to overturn the concert stereotypes method impossible. This method also has the disadvantage of being time consuming. If design time constraints are short, we would not recommend this method. Finally, we do not think that making the witch a villain again is a setback. The current mainstreaming of positive witches is a reversal of the bad witch stereotype of the past. We just can't stop overturning current stereotypes in order to keep creating new ones. Thanks for listening.